What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Tomorrow morning I'm meeting up with Joe PK and Matthew Shaw, and we're going to head down to Cornwall, Penzance to be exact, launch Matt's boat, and we're going to head around the coast towards Land's End to dive some deeper pinnacles and hopefully find some winter fish. It was a nice 05:30 start for me as I got my kit ready and met up with Joe and Matt at our little rendezvous point. We then got in one vehicle, loaded all our kit up, hitched the boat up, and off we went down to Cornwall to Penzance. Once the boat was launched, we headed south and then southwest along the coast and stopped off at our first little cove. Now the visibility was absolutely cracking for this time of the year. Normally the water's like chocolate and you can barely see past the gun. So we were pretty lucky in this sense. Joe and Matt headed slightly in towards the shallows looking for some flatfish and mullet. Also was in shallow water but just focused more on the variations in rocks, which is actually completely different to what we have in Devon. These are quite big granite boulders and you can really get underneath them and look for different fish and lobsters if there is any in the holes. So that's what I did, but unfortunately on this first drop we didn't really see much. So we then kitted back up and moved on to our next location. We were drift diving on this type of pinnacle here, and for those who don't know, drift diving is where the boat driver, in this case was Matthew, he basically drops you at the top of the pinnacle. You do your breathe up, and by the time the tide drifts you down, you're over the top of the pinnacle, and then you do your dive. Spend however long underwater and then come back up, and then the driver of the boat will pick you back up, and then you'll just repeat the same process. This next location was slightly different to our first. This one is offshore by about 400 or 500 meters and the water's a lot deeper. Obviously there's pinnacles around which is in shallower water, but roughly it's between 14 and 20 meters deep. I dive down, hit the bottom, and in the distance I can see a pollock slowly approaching me but keeping its distance. Now as I was scanning to my left and my right, over my left shoulder popped a massive pollock. I wasn't expecting it. As you can see, I do actually jump a little bit, line up a nice shot. Unfortunately it wasn't a stone shot, but still a good shot placement just behind the gills. Right, so as Joe was just explaining, we were dropping off the back of the pinnacle between roughly 10 and 15 meters. I think Joe dropped a little bit lower on his dive for the bigger pollock, but I managed to get a nice sized pollock there in 14.9 meters. Slightly different colouring to the one Joe's just got, but all round still quite a nice fish. So I think we're going to head inshore now and look for some flatties. So that's the plan. This next little clip is probably the funniest of the trip. Me and Matt were just chilling out, talking on the boat whilst Joe was having a dive. Matt had his lure in the water, just jigging up and down for some pollock, and all of a sudden gets a massive hit on the rod, and well, the video will speak for itself. Jesus Christ. Yeah.
What the hell is this?
I reckon it's a cod, you know.
Gee whiz, it's just banging.
Can't forget about Joe, by the way.
No.
What we got?
I can see something there. I think it's a Pollack.
It's a big old pollock.
I don't want to bungle this.
Be on film too. Nice. You got it?
I think so. Oh! Bugger! Oh, you wouldn't believe it, would you?
It snapped.
Snapped.
I should have helped you with that.
No, don't worry, it snapped. Do you get it on film?
Yes, I sure did, Matt. Something you probably won't live down for quite a while, but nonetheless, it was still very funny to watch. Now, in my eyes, a trip on the boat isn't complete without seeing a pod of dolphins, and this is exactly what we got. And as always, absolute pleasure to see. Now, the next cove we pulled into, Matt and Joe decided to go into the shallows and look for some mullet, which they did. They managed to find, I think, 4 mullet each. Joe very kindly sent me some of his footage to use in my video. As you can see here, the viz is really good quality again for winter diving months in the UK. So Joe's in about 1 or 2 meters of water here in the shallows targeting the mullet. I decided to do the opposite and go out a little bit deeper and focus on some lobsters and look in some ledges and some little caves. Now, after about 10 or 15 minutes looking around, found a nice little overhang with a sandy patch in front, and inside this cave, tucked in at the very back, was a very nice sized lobster. Now, looking at this clip, it looks really easy to get the lobster out, but because it was in a cave and it was a slight awkward angle, I couldn't really get the spear in to work the lobster out enough. I did try and put my right hand in behind it and flush it out from the other way, but that didn't work. Yeah, absolutely gutted. That lobster, after about 5 or 6 different attempts, on the 7th I went down and it disappeared, unfortunately. I've explained that in previous videos. Once you disturb them too much, they have the tendency to then move location, and it was about 10 meters deep, so I didn't actually see when it did move off. Yeah, I went down again and it wasn't there, it disappeared. So after the failed attempt on the lobster and having 4 or 5 fish in the boat from Matt and Joe, we then decided to move location again, this time pulling into Sennen Cove, which was really nice. I'd never been there before. The water was really clear, and on the bottom of the beach on Sennen Cove is a wreck. I'll leave a link in the description of what the wreck is and why it's there and how it all happened if you're interested to read up on it. Now, as I was diving it and checking in the various different holes, now I was greeted by a little seal pup, and this one was really friendly. I actually think he was after some of my fish on the boat, as he was hanging around the boat and you could see him smelling the fish that we had on board. But nonetheless, he was really friendly and just great to see in the water and to be around. The light slowly fading and our hour trip back to Penzance, we decided to call it a day, but what a quality afternoon it was with Joe and Matt, and hopefully we can do this again at some point. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a cracking day out with Joe and Matthew, so thank you very much for taking me out and showing me the marks and putting me on some nice fish. Pleasure to dive with you both, and obviously I hope this can continue throughout the rest of 2022. and I'm excited to see what sort of fish that we can get. Right, that wraps up the video. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to turn that notification bell on so you don't miss out on any new videos that I post. If you've got any questions about the video itself or just spearfishing in general, please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you as quick as possible. That's it for this week, and I'll see you on the next one.
Trying to find some balance in my life. I never really put up a fight, and now I'm losing sleep.